When I was 10 years old, our family was travelling on a boat when a storm suddenly hit. And I remember the waves starting to swell and the boat rocking back and forth. And I was filled with fear. You know, I was used to the solid ground back at home. And here the world didn't make sense. It was moving, it was disconcerting. I felt nauseous. Today we are in an unprecedented moment in world history. No one living has ever experienced anything like this. And it feels a little bit like that boat, like what used to be firm is now suddenly shifting and moving. And I haven't quite found my balance in this yet. You know, some days I just dismiss it all, and I think it's all going to be okay, and I'm positive, and it's fine. And then the next day I take it way too seriously, and I'm researching all of the newspaper articles and everything else, and it's like I haven't found a place in the middle where I'm just dealing with this responsibly. And for us as a family, we have been self-isolating since Tuesday. Cole picked up a cough, and it's been hard. And even like the term self-isolating, like we didn't have this in our vocabulary. We're learning all of these new terms. We got this new way of speaking. We have entered a new world, and I honestly don't think it's ever going to be the same again. The coronavirus, whether you get sick or not, whether it affects you directly or not, is going to absolutely change everything for all of us. And I know that there's some people who have just taken this in their stride, and they're like, you know what, life goes on, I'm killing it, this is fine, I'll just work from home and watch Netflix, and that's amazing. But for so many other people, this is devastating. You know, people who are freelancers, who can't work, who can't pay the bills, this is going to be painful and difficult for a long, long time. I was chatting to somebody else just this week who was saying that their mum is in the final stages of cancer and has months to live. And they're like, what? How do I deal with it? How do I support people? How do I love people? How do I say goodbye during this time? And I think that we're going to be needed in ways like we've never been needed before. I think that the church needs to be at the forefront at the moment, at this time in history. This is our moment to say, we're here to help, we're here to love, we're here to serve. And yet at the same time, we still feel that boat rocking side to side, just like everybody else. And I don't know where you're up to today. I don't know everybody who's going to be on this call. Maybe you're feeling okay, or maybe you feel like you just don't know how this is going to end. And when the world shifts and moves and we lose control, it's easy to lose perspective as well. You know, this tunnel, this season we're in, we start to think that it might never get better, that we might never get through this, that we can't manage. And especially when you're isolated and you're away from your friends and your community, you can get lost in it. In the book of Proverbs, it says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And what it's saying is that when we lose ourselves in this moment, it affects us so deeply. It brings a pain and a sickness which destroys everything around us. And I think it's because we don't understand how powerful hope really is. You see, when we talk about hope in modern culture, it's normally like, do you know what? I hope something's good on the television tonight. I hope that my football team win the match. I hope that people like the post that I'm putting on Facebook. And that kind of hope, it's just wishful thinking. It's optimism. There's absolutely no power in that kind of hope. But when the Bible talks about hope, it describes it as an anchor. It describes it as something that is firm, something that is solid, something that I can build my life upon. You see, the Bible doesn't describe hope as wishful optimism. It says that hope is a foundation that will transform the way that I go through these exact kinds of moments. You see, hope isn't psychological, it's theological. Our hope is Jesus. He is our hope. And so when we place our hope in Jesus, what we're really saying is that no matter the situation, no matter what I can see, no matter what is coming against me, I believe that Jesus is working somehow behind the scenes to make this good. That he is going to turn this to good for my life. I believe that we are anchored to heaven. That when we pray, he hears everything that we say straight away. That when we call on his name, he responds immediately. That when we cry out in pain, he hurts with us. We are tied to Jesus, and Jesus is in heaven, and he is interceding on our behalf. Jesus is working for you, regardless of whether you see it or not. There's this incredible story. Paul was this early Christian who was arrested for sharing the gospel, and they said that he had to go to Rome to face trial. God speaks to him and says, look, if you get in the boat, there's going to be a storm and there's going to be a shipwreck. And he warns everybody. He's like, don't get in the boat. This is going to go badly. But of course, he's a prisoner. So what are they going to do? They take him out to sea, and then the clouds start rolling. The seas start churning. People start freaking out. You know, even fishermen are afraid when there's a storm at sea. This is dangerous. It says that the sailors tried to abandon the ship. They lowered the lifeboat as though they were going to put out anchors from the front of the ship. But Paul said to the commanding officer, you will all die unless the sailors stay aboard. So the soldiers cut the ropes to the lifeboat and let it drift away. I mean, think about this for a moment. They cut off their lifeboats. I mean, how radical was that? It's like they were saying, I'm only going to look into one place for my safety. I don't need to be afraid. I don't need to create backup plans. I don't need to have everything else in place, because I know that I have Jesus and that he is working on my behalf even when I cannot see this. I don't need to have all of these lifeboats because I have God. And God can stop the wind and the waves at any time. There is nothing that can come into my life that can change the plan that he has for it. And so I trust in him more than ever. When I hold on to hope in difficult situations, I'm holding on to Christ himself. And that gives me stability. And then the storm doesn't stop, it continues. And even though they've stayed in this boat, it breaks and it falls apart, and they're forced out to land, and they end up on this beach on the Isle of Malta, and they're feeling like God must hate them. They're feeling like life is going as badly as possible, and now they're shipwrecked. They're in the sand and they're building fires, and they're just trying to get life back to normal. And there's going to become a moment for us which will be exactly like this. When we come through the end of this and we're now safe and we're back on dry land, and yet at the same time nothing is as it was. And people are going to be scraping and trying to pull things together and bring life back to normal. And during this time, Paul is there and he's collecting firewood, and he puts his hand into a bush and there's a snake in it and it bites him. And everyone watches and they start judging him and saying, do you know what? He's a prisoner. Maybe he's a murderer. The gods must absolutely hate him. He is the worst of the worst. But then he shakes off this snake and he throws it in the fire, and the poison doesn't affect him. Somehow he finds that he is immune to what is destroying everybody else. And they look at him, and suddenly these guys who 1 minute they're judging him turn around and they say, maybe he's a god himself. This guy, how did he not be affected by that snake the same way that we would have been? There is something special about this man. And then the Bible tells us that Paul walks around the island and that every single sickness was healed through him. You know, I believe that the way that we go through storms in life gives us permission to then speak into the storms in other people's lives. That we get to go around the island afterwards. Because we don't, you don't know what God is going to do through you in this next season. You have no idea what God can do with your life. We are surrounded by people who need hope, who need love, who need faith more than at any time before. What looked like the worst thing for Paul suddenly became the moment when he was most able to help people. I don't know the battles that you are facing right now. I don't know how you feel in the middle of all of this. Maybe you're full of anxiety, maybe you're full of faith. But what I do know is that there is nothing that can come against you that Jesus cannot use for good. The second thing that I know is that you have an opportunity even now in this moment to bring light, to bring love, to bring hope, and to bring healing. There are people who need the light that you have shining inside of you. I mentioned earlier Proverbs, and it says that hope deferred makes the soul sick. You know, I often thought that this verse meant promises deferred. You know, when I don't get what I wanted, or luxuries deferred, or breakthrough deferred, but that's not what it actually says. It says hope deferred. You know, even if I don't see what I want to see, even if this doesn't turn out how I expected it, I need to hold on to hope, because there is a sickness that comes into my life when I let go of hope. So hold on to hope, because hope has power to carry you through every storm. This hope is an anchor. It is firm and secure, and it's tied to Jesus no matter what. Keep being the church that God called you to be. You guys are amazing, and I look forward to catching up with you again online this week.